God would never ask us to do something that God has never done. The significance of incarnation, of the Word becoming flesh, of God becoming human, of eternity entering into time, of divinity becoming dust, is that at the end, Jesus rose from the dead. And what makes this Friday good, what Good Friday valuable for us, is that at the end, Jesus rose from the dead. Now, the prevailing influence of this day, of Good Friday, is in the understanding that God, who raised Jesus from the dead, becomes the standard by which we judge this global pandemic. Simply because even in lockdown, the promise that Jesus took with him to the grave becomes the single greatest motivation of hope and faith. Yes, the lockdown has been extended by another 2 weeks. And the question is, in this time of fear, in this time of losing control, how are we going to live? What is the role of faith? What is the role of the church? What can we do? We are helpless. We are heartbroken. We are weak. We are in pain. How shall we act? And who to blame? Peter said, sharing about the shadow of accusation earlier. Even though it is hard to grasp the strain of what has been put on the physical and the spiritual fabric of our society, but the question is, who has taken us through the age of slavery, the age of segregation, and the age of marginalization? Who has taken us through the age of cancer? Who has taken us through the age of HIV and AIDS? Is there anything too hard for God? Is there any problem unsolvable by God? Is there any place that God cannot go? Jesus stood on this day face to face with death, with a promise. He stood face to face with the principalities and the powers of this world with the promise. Peter, put away your sword. I have a promise. I am not going to limit my thoughts because I have a promise. I am not going to go through this pandemic and decide what is possible and not impossible because I have a promise. Our faith is grounded on God's promises, and our promises are in the truth of God's word. What is the truth? Pilate asked Jesus, and he walked away. He never waited for Jesus to answer. He left him for the crowd. It is one thing to reject Jesus, but seeking to silence the power of the gospel for the sake of social fame and Facebook likes is something else. Good Friday reminds us that the enemy is at work to silence the message, to silence the messenger, and to establish their own framework in which the absolute truth of the gospel has no part. And finally, to replace Jesus altogether with something or with someone. We are the people of the promise. And through the word of promise, we embrace the nearness of God regardless of any situation.